I think one of the most fantastic things about the English football pyramid is, Lincoln City in the last few years, we've competed in the same division as, Portsmouth, Sunderland, Derby County, Ipswich, Sheffield Wednesday, huge, they're monsters of football clubs in the English system. And, they've many occasions competed at the very highest level and been incredibly successful. And
Liam, Scully, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate you having me on.
I'm excited to talk to you. You are the CEO of Lincoln City Football Club. So what does this role include?
Probably easier to tell you what it doesn't include, I guess. No, I think, I suppose, first of all, as the most senior executive that reports to board and ownership of a football club, I think the first thing you have to remember is that you're a temporary custodian of a community asset. This football club, Lincoln City, has been here for nearly 140 years. Our aim is to make sure it's here for another 140 years plus. And, fundamentally, the job is to leave it in a better place than you find it. And, if I'm lucky enough to be here for 10 or 15 years, then it's making sure that whatever we do, enhances the football club today, tomorrow, but most importantly, in the medium and long term. So everything from the sporting side to the business, operationally, making sure our community commitments and our social impact is seen and heard as well. So it's incredibly varied and a very, very enjoyable role.
I'm sure. And we will dig a little bit deeper, in all these things that you mentioned there. But can you talk a little bit about the club and, what it means for the city and some history, because it's an old club?
Yeah, so like I say, 140 years old. The football club's had some fantastic times in those 139, coming on 140 years. It's also had some really difficult times. I joined the football club in August 2017. We'd just been promoted back to the Football League. So for those of you listening that don't know, the English pyramid has the Premier League, 3 leagues within the EFL, and then the National League system. Lincoln City had spent a number of years outside of the English Football League, but under Danny and Nicky Cowley had been promoted back into the Football League, had also had that fantastic cup run to be the first English team post-war to reach the cup finals of the FA Cup. Unfortunately, was lost to Arsenal at the Emirates, but beating Premier League clubs and Championship clubs along the way. But I think really what we are and what we're trying to do is, we're a single in the county of Lincolnshire. Our aim is always to try and be the premier football club, and that's both highest in the pyramid and how it operates. I'm sure there are many of our rivals within the county that would respectfully want to challenge that. But I think we've just got to be mindful that we want to be successful on the pitch. We want to win on the pitch, but we want to win off the pitch, and it's making sure that it can't be all leave it around Saturday at 3:00. Our impact, our reach, everything that we do has to be broader than that. So we find ourselves at the moment at the start of a new strategic cycle. So very much looking forward to the next 5.5 seasons, working with the board and working with the executive team here to kind of really shape that next stage of our growth and hopefully upward trajectory.
That's interesting. And I know there are several things you are working on, and one of these is the Win Develop mission of the club. Is that something you can elaborate on?
Yeah, so I suppose Win Develops what we'd probably internally define as our North Star, and it sits at the heart of all our decision making. And I think it's about how we get that balance between winning today and being competitive, because the one thing that you do know with a football club, whether it's your social impact or whether it's just directly getting fans through the door, they want to see success in the short term. So winning more often than not. So it's been incredibly conscious about that, but equally having that real balance between the short term and those midterm strategies. So if you look at our work strand, it always has to be somewhere in the region of 50-50 between the win and the development side of the football club. But it certainly can't be 100 or 99-1 in either or favour. But just to explain Win Develop, that's not just about football and footballers. That's about across the whole model of the football club. So One of the stories we tell quite a lot is, whilst we're very proud of the number of professional athletes that have come to our football club, developed, and then either been sold on or occasionally left at the end of contracts as part of their pathway. What we're also proud of is the front and back office team members, the practitioners in the backroom team at the EPC, at the training ground as well, that have then gone on to have careers further up the pyramid or in other high profile professional industries as well. So it is about genuinely and sincerely developing that or ensuring we have a culture that people come here to achieve, but also come here to grow as professionals, as practitioners, as athletes. And the aim is to make sure that everybody leaves us better than they joined us. It's obviously not always possible, but that's what we try and set up and aim to achieve.
Mm. And you have one of the youngest rosters in English football, I read. And is that also part of the sustainable model, that grow from develop the young players and then take them into the team, and then, as you said, maybe sell them later on in their careers?
Yeah, it's definitely part of that. So typically we sign players what would be their natural pre-peak in terms of age, and then we hopefully they play a number of games for us, and then we always say either we move and we grow together, or if you move quicker than us, then on entry we always talk about the exit point. One of the things that I don't think we're unique at, but something that we're very comfortable in doing, is always talking about the jump off point when people join us, and being really clear what success looks like for us, what success looks like for them, and how most of the time that can be mutual, and we can choreograph that to ensure that it works together. But every now and then somebody goes quicker than we can go, and then it just enables us to have great pride in watching them, and quite frankly they become the poster boys and poster girls for the next iteration. So yeah, you would typically see Lincoln sign players pre-peak, and therefore that does mean younger. The sweet spot for us typically is players that have still played a significant number of professional games at men's football, but that can often be in different countries or in emerging leagues, not necessarily 150 EFL appearances. That would be not typical of a Lincoln City signing.
I see. So we're talking about sustainability, and of course there are different types. There is social, economic, environmental, and we have touched a little bit about some of them here already. But you have a vision as a club to be forward-thinking, sustainable club. So what other aspects with regards to sustainability are you working on?
Yeah, so I think number one is financial. So the English financial ecosystem is broken right now, and for us to do that as a football club, we need extraordinary activity happen. Typically, that's cup runs and that's player trading. I think what we'd like to do, and we have a bit of a mantra, is every time we sell a player, we try and build something. But what would be nicer is that we're not having to knock on the doors of our owners and investors and ask us to underpin losses, but that we're truly break even, and certainly over a 3-year period or more than a single season lens, that we're able to do that. I think in order for us to achieve that and be competitive, we need help from the game and redistribution reform, deal, no deal with the Premier League. That's really important, and one of the reasons why we're firmly supporting the implementation of a regulator, and a regulator that has the ability to intervene with the financial controls and financial parameters and distributions. But then more broader to that, sustainable is in ensuring that our projects, our systems, our infrastructure, everything that we set up, not just from a green agenda, but it has the ability to self-serve and repeat time and time again. So it's not just a one-time offer. Speaking then in the strictest forms of sustainability, it's making sure that every development that we have at the football club is cognizant and conscious of how we can improve our carbon footprint. We're working on a number of exciting projects at the moment. I think there'll be a few people in the media and marketing team that'll kick me if I say too much at this stage. But it's about thinking outside of the box, and I know that's cliche, but it's just looking at how we can act socially responsibly to encourage others to do the same, but equally our direct impact So the things that we do day to day also have that direct impact. So it's both the direct status and indirect status that we're looking to improve in that area. So yeah, as you said, Marcus, a real broad spectrum, but we accept the broad spectrum challenge as well.
I see. That's really interesting. And one project that I think will affect all of these three is the stadium redevelopment project that you have. So how's that coming?
Yeah, so we're currently close, about 8 to 10 weeks away from finishing the Stacey West Community Hub. So for those for those people listening, that won't be familiar with Lincoln City, Stacey West Stand is named after two fans that was sadly lost in the Bradford fire in 1985, and that stand is named after them as part of a legacy. But the community hub is about how we serve the Sinsel ward, where the stadium's based, and broader and wider. And it's a really important part of the football club. It's also the most significant stadium development to happen in a generation. So we're really proud to be the custodians that are overseeing that. We've worked, and the finance that's been delivered has been Football Foundation. It's been levelling up money, so grant from central government in the UK, as well as our own investment into that. But it's an absolute critical component to what the club wants to be, and what is significant and what is important to us in the future. And the community hub being basically front and center when you drive onto the footprint in the future, that for us is an incredibly important branding, incredibly important message, and something that we're proud to open hopefully by June this year. The site's fully functional and operational, certainly ahead of the new season. But yeah, absolutely, it has all kinds of smart technology built into it. So from rainwater harvesting to ensure that our water bills are reduced, right through to finding a place and a hub that we can contribute to the children in care agenda that we have across the county of Lincolnshire. So yeah, it's going to be a really cool development, and certainly something we're really proud to be opening soon.
Sounds like it. Talking again about the financial sustainability, you have kind of a sour record at some point of being the most relegated club is going. And I assume that, the lower the division, less the maybe sponsorship incomes and so forth. So, we talked about that, to the win develop, to win in order to be in the as high as possible, but also develop in the long run. But how much does it, play in financially depending on what league you're in?
Oh, absolutely huge. And I think it's first of all, it's the central distributions. Second of all, it's the eyeballs, it's the reach that you have, not just directly from Lincoln City's success, but then the teams and the opposition that you're coming up against. And I think one of the most fantastic things about the English football pyramid is, Lincoln City in the last few years, we've competed in the same division as, Portsmouth, Sunderland, Derby County, Ipswich, Sheffield Wednesday, huge, they're monsters of football clubs in the English system. And they've many occasions competed at the very highest level and been incredibly successful. And it wasn't so long ago that Lincoln versus Ipswich was a fairy tale FA Cup victory that set us on the way. And a few years later, we find ourselves as peers. So that's a great part of the football pyramid. But the commerciality of that is incredibly important. And for us to continue to grow the football club, that's why the on-field success is important. And I think the one thing I will say about the English pyramid is the moment that you take for granted your current status, I think that's the moment it bites you on the backside. It's such an incredibly competitive pyramid that, in League One, you have to look up, but you have to look down as much and be aware of the trapdoors as much as you want to be going up through the pyramid. You've got to get recruitment right. You've got to get the ebb and flow. When you're developing a young squad, you will have peaks and troughs at times, and you've got to get that balance right. And yeah, Marcus, as you rightly said, when it was re-election in the English pyramid, so when you dropped out of the league but you could be voted back in, the history of the football club is I think we were we were re-elected by the members a number of times, but that's probably because we were so rubbish that they didn't mind having us back in the division. So yeah, if you want to be harsh, someone once told me that we were probably a history of being a little bit rubbish, but quite well liked. So hopefully we're changing that brand and that identity now, and we're serious competitors in the division and against the people that we compete against.
Yeah. And you said in the beginning that you have a 5-year like strategic plan. So is within that plan, is that a long-term goal of reaching the Premier League, or is that something you have, said out loud?
Yeah, no. So Premier League maybe not so, but we definitely want to be competing in the division above. That's our aim. And I think these things are always really interesting because excuse the crassness of this, but going out and saying that can sometimes be a noose around your neck. It's almost like something that's used to beat you with, and equally. So it's not like we've got this glossy brochure that sits at and we bring it out in every management meeting, and we're shoving it down people's throats every day. But yeah, absolutely, the stated aim has to be how do we get to and establish ourselves in the division above. Now, for us to be able to achieve that, we're going to have to hit a really small sweet spot. With all due respect to many other clubs, they have a bigger sweet spot than we do, and their chance of success is higher because maybe the history, the heritage, they're a bigger commercial entity, whatever it may be. So yeah, we know we're going to have to be really on our game if we're to achieve that objective. But nobody at Lincoln City gets out of bed in the morning and thinks about how do we coast and how do we keep going. The objective has to be how do we improve. So yeah, we're bold in that ambitions. We state it. We're all aligned. There's a real understanding. There's a real alignment, and there's a real commitment to get to that. But it's going to take lots of things to come together at the same time, at the same moment, in order to be successful. But yeah, like I say, Marcus, we're definitely going to give it a go.
Exciting. Something else that is fascinating with the club is that you are community owned, and something that I believe happened during COVID period, if I'm correct. So can you talk a little bit about, first of all, how was this period during COVID, and how the decision to become community owned grew?
Yeah, so just to really explain that, we have nearly 5,000 shareholders in the football club, and there's actually two iterations of how we got here. First and foremost, we in early 2000s in the UK, we had ITV Digital that had the contract for the broadcast rights, and unfortunately that they went bust, and that put Lincoln City into financial peril. And the board and the ownership at the time, clearly long before my arrival, albeit there's some members still around from that time, they shook buckets. They did everything they could. There's some fantastic stories, some incredibly fantastic gestures of people remortgaging their houses and doing things to save the football club, offering it as security. And the legacy of that is that we had around 1,000 shareholders that had done various things to help sustain the football club. And at that point, 2 fans were also elected and appointed to the board of directors. That was part of the negotiations, really. So from walking into the football club, we had 2 fan directors appointed to the board. And then when COVID hit, and we had to be agile and we had to be nimble, we recognized that we already had this existing share base. So when we went to the fans and talked about refunds and how we deal with season tickets, we offered them the ability to exchange that and convert that into equity into the football club. And 4,000 of them took that choice and did that. So I always say I'm the CEO in football that's got the most bosses going, given we have that shareholder base. But I think what that shows is hopefully the resilience and the collaboration and the spirit that we run the football club in. That then in the bank of goodwill, if it's ever needed to be cashed in, then the fans reciprocate and show you yeah, the fact that they appreciate how their club is being run. So just to be really clear, we are owned. So Lincoln City Holdings owns the majority of the football club, and then we have a lot of shareholders in Lincoln City FC. But I do think we have that right balance. It's right for Lincoln City, not necessarily right for everybody else, of being having community ownership and community shareholders, as well as having investors and a board that can just help you finance and fundraise some of those capital projects, or even feed the club in the loss-making years, in order to help us grow. So yeah, a long-winded way of saying not quite community-owned, but I think a really nice hybrid that works for Lincoln City.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because in Sweden we have something we call a 51% rule, which means that the members have 51% and then 49 can be, someone else. So it's an interesting to see that now this hybrid type of model also is in other places.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think very similar. The only difference is we've probably self-elected to do it that way, or optimized and recognized the history and the heritage of the club and continued of that. But yeah, completely agree. And yeah, you see some fantastic models, and certainly you guys are leading the way in some areas. So yeah, pleased to see that.
Yeah. Talking about, the community owners and the fans and everything, fan engagement is a really important topic for a club to engage their fan base. So how are you working with regards to fan engagement?
It's really interesting because first of all, huge proponent, and fan engagement is incredibly important. But I think fan engagement's almost become taboo, or it's almost become a subject where you brand it fan engagement, and then it becomes it lacks sincerity. It becomes a strategy. I think fan engagement at Lincoln City and many other football clubs just has to be, first of all, those sincere gestures of how you run the football club. So one of the things that you wake up every morning and you realize working in football and at a football club is you're incredibly lucky to do so. We are, for whatever reason, rightly or wrongly, we can be like Disneyland to a number of adults and people, and the community of Lincoln. Our players are heroes, are their role models. And I think you just never forget that. And our job really is to break down the barriers between the green rectangle of the pitch and the stands, and bring those as close as we can together. It's not about having a 50-page operational strategy as to how we're going to engage with the fans. Of course, there are some key pillars and building blocks, but it's just about taking moments and seizing opportunities. So to give you a couple of quick examples, this weekend, the game just gone, we had our junior takeover. So that was where all the senior members of staff were shadowed, and so juniors had to write in, they had to apply, they had to go through an interview process, and then those were selected. They shadowed. I had a mini CEO, we had a mini head coach, we had a mini head of commercial, and a mini PA announcer, and they ran. They worked with us to run the football club for the day. And a little bit worrying because some of the guys and girls were too good. A bit worried for your job, but that creates memories of a lifetime, and hopefully, they become fans now and in the future, and they've got great stories that they can regale to their kids and their grandkids. Equally, we every match day we just have something called Moment of Magic. So all the team are aware that they can just pick people out of the crowd and just come sit them in the dugouts to watch the warm-ups. Just bring them across the boundary from the advertising boards and just bring them over the other side. We have people painting the penalty spot, putting the corner flags in, and like it costs no money. It's very little time, and it's just a mindset. It's just about opening eyes to, understanding how you can make somebody's match day, week, month, even year to some degree. And I think in fact, the proudest achievement that I have at Lincoln City is that is cultural. So it started off by having to push it and having to manufacture things, but whereas now that is completely organic, and we don't need to talk about it. Every member of staff that comes through the door quickly understands their roles and responsibilities in this area, and they have to work towards it. And yeah, that's something we're really proud of, and it has to be a golden thread that runs throughout the whole organization.
Yeah, that's incredible. And the first time I've heard about this, the junior shadowing. So as you said, they were a little bit too good. So were there some, new perspectives, some learnings that you could take from that?
Yeah, and they ask brilliant questions. You're walking around and they say, why do you do X, Y, and Z? And makes you stop and think and go, yeah, actually, why do we do that? So yeah, and the other thing is, it's really wholesome. Everybody really enjoys it. And it's just different. Like we are, sorry for labouring this, but the PA announcer this weekend, we obviously, speaking to you after we had quite a nice victory this weekend. The PA announcer was brilliant. He was almost calling it out like a WWE wrestler, almost. Goal and real, and the fans loved it, and he loved it, and it's just really nice to kind of just experience that. So it actually then adds to the match day experience, because everybody kind of feels that, and I think I think they're the real wholesome, moments that you just really enjoy working in football for, because that's what it's about.
Yeah. You're really good at engaging with the fan base, also on social media. I read some stories, visiting people's houses and so forth. So is that something like you take that? Is that important to you to have the direct dialogue with the fans?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things, and I think I know the anecdote and the story that you're on about. But I think first of all, a chief executive football club can be the pantomime villain at times. The suit that walks around and often can be seen but never really heard, and these mysterious figures. So I think first and foremost, I think your job's to be quite visible and accessible. So we have a thriving fan village. I make it an absolute aim every match day to just be visible, walk through, talk to people, just so people can talk to you, moan at you if the coffee's cold, or they don't like the burgers, or whatever it may be, or just even just talk and have a conversation. So just break down those barriers, because whilst I'm definitely not the football club, I recognise that I represent, and I have a responsibility and a duty. So I think it's about I think it's about being accessible, being open. It's about knowing to draw the fair line. So, like, in the right way, we have a fantastic fan service department. So I'm not there to deal with every email or because there are other things that need my time. But I think it's really important to be visible. And I think the story that you mentioned was, we just had a funny anecdote, really. Was one of the fans said, I'm buying a season ticket and but I expect Liam Scully to hand deliver it to my door on a Wednesday, or whatever it was be. And the media team saw this, and again, it shows you the creative thinking, and they said, come on, let's go and do this. So that's exactly what we did. We knocked on his door, and I hand delivered him the season ticket. And it was funny because he the person that we're talking about, he's a really good, really supportive fan. He likes a moan every now and then, but we had a really good chuckle, we had a laugh, and it broke down those barriers as well. And I think that for me just shows you're human. It's a nice, fun thing to do, and we can all have a little bit of a laugh and a joke about it. And I suppose the other thing is, if he complains about me again, at least I know where he lives.
Exactly. So I've heard about the players sometimes calling and maybe showing up, but I never heard the CEO actually coming and hand delivering tickets. So maybe you're the first.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Is there any backlash on, on the same things, that you are very visible, you're, on social media, you're out there? Is there any backlash, any negative feedback?
Yeah, no, with that, we had a difficult run of form earlier on in the season, and there were a few less than savoury moments that you had to experience, and that's sometimes hard. But yeah, I think actually in the most difficult times, I think that's when you've actually got to be most visible and most present. I think if you're only outside when the sun is shining, then I think that's a very dangerous precedent to set. So yeah, I think sometimes. I think the biggest danger, I guess, is I know fans can often email me and get in touch, and then really want that specific and that personal response. I do try at times, but I can't promise. And equally, there's a team of people very far better at it than I am in place at Lincoln City in order to deal with those issues. So it is about trying to get that right balance. But we're Lincoln City. Our average attendance is 8,500, 9,000. We're not a monster of a football club. So I think whilst it's not scalable to some degree, you've equally got to understand, what could Lincoln City ever be, and just know that what you're trying to do is sustainable in the, as we grow. And yeah, I think it's just about setting those fair and reasonable boundaries. But yeah, there's definitely downsides at times, but there's definitely more reasons for doing it. And we've had more fun and had some great days from doing it that way. So yeah, I just think it's overall it's a net benefit.
So the positives outweigh the negative.
Yeah, 100%.
See, the club is nicknamed the Imps after the legend of Lincoln Imp. Can you explain that for those who don't know what that is?
Yeah, well, I suppose the closest thing, I guess, is a gargoyle. And yeah, in the cathedral, the famous Lincoln Imp was there. And when the club was started, it was adopted, the Imps, as the nickname. And I guess I'll give you a quick anecdote on a similar theme. We've just, throughout this year, we've been through a process to change our official club crest. And when I say change, and I know there's danger in this area, we've actually gone back to a previous club crest. It's a more simplified imp. We just like the simplicity of it. We actually think it's a bit modern, fresher branding. So the imp that we have currently is a very intricate, detailed imp, and it's very hard to draw on embroidery, quite difficult to use from a marketing point of view. So we consulted with them, we talked with the fans, and we wanted to test what their thoughts were in going back to a former imp. And we did an official vote, and I think I'm recalling the figures correct, but 77% of season ticket holders or match members voted in favour. So the reason why we made it members is just making sure Grimsby Town are our local, just making sure Grimsby Town fans couldn't crash the vote, for example. But 77% of our fans voted in favour of moving towards or moving back towards the traditional imp. But what was really interesting is if you took a snapshot on social media, I think Instagram was the only one, based on comments, that was for it, whereas between Twitter and Facebook, you had slightly more, it's in the regions of 50-50 for and against. But actually, when you took the pure vote and you gave it to the members, so maybe the vocal minority, as some would call it, we saw that we were doing the right thing. So I think when you talk about engaging with the fans and looking at your sources of information and data, which I'm sure we'll get onto at some point, I think it's really important that you use the right sources of information, because that quick anecdote shows you that Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., that you have to use them, but equally you have to take the kind of subjective feedback that you get from there as with a pinch of salt. And that the logo, the badge, the development is a great example of why so.
Yeah, for sure. And just to give it like a quick anecdote from the local hockey team in my town here, they had a change of logo a year ago or so, and they didn't consult first with the fans and everything, and it was the horrendous feedback, and they had to actually take a step back and redesign and come back again.
Wow. Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to kind of take people on that journey with you. So your job is to articulate the vision, and then it's to then tell captivating stories that then take people on that journey with you, doing things to people, whether they're the rightful owners or just the emotional owners of something. That's never a wise idea. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me, and I think there are many clubs in the UK that have got that wrong in the past. Hopefully we're one of the clubs that did get it right.
Let's see. So I would like to get to know you a little bit better. And, from a boy from Sheffield growing up, how did you fall in love with football and take this career path?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't deliberate. Like many boys and girls, my dream was being a professional footballer. And you can't see me, I'm sat down, but I'm not quite, well, when I say I'm not quite 6 foot, I'm quite away from being 6 foot. I was a goalkeeper. I never grew. So whilst being technically okay, I'm told I was never really going to make it in the professional game. So I was very fortunate to be awarded one of the first ever apprenticeships in the off field in coaching by the PFA, which was in 2001. I was able to take that at Doncaster Rovers. So whilst I grew up a Sheffield United fan, and watching games at Bramall Lane. I used to also go with my dad to Doncaster Rovers. That was his team. And I don't know why, but back in those days, it was like Sheffield United was at home one week and Doncaster Rovers was at home the other. They're a fair distance away from each other, but the fixtures just typically worked. So that was it. It was with my friends on a Saturday at Sheffield United and then Doncaster with my dad. But yeah, luckily got an apprenticeship. And then, without doing the full fat version, I did 17, 18 years at Doncaster Rovers. Short sabbaticals here and there, but predominantly 16, 17 years at Doncaster. I was foundation chief executive for a number of years, so running the community interest side of the football club. And then I stepped into the group, the Club Doncaster Group, which had the football club, the rugby club, the stadium, and a few other assets and properties. And then was chief operating officer for 4 years. And then when Lincoln City were promoted to the Football League, just through relationships, got to know he wasn't chairman at the time, but Clive Nates, who's chairman now, and met him. We got on quite well. And yeah, I was August 2017, appointed as chief executive at Lincoln City, having spent many years doing many different jobs within football clubs. But yeah, I can't ever say I honestly set out to do this. I guess it would have been a dream, but never thought it would be possible.
Yeah. And I mean, you're 37, I think, years old.
38.
38. 38.
Yeah.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you have already over 20 years of experience from the football industry. So I guess very few people at your age has that extensive type of experience.
Yeah, there's no doubt I were lucky in two regards. One, Doncaster Rovers, they came through the league quite quickly as well whilst I was there, and Lincoln have done the same. So I think you are afforded opportunities in an emerging structures that you aren't when you're part of that. So when you're not part of the big teams, you are afforded more opportunities. And I think that the bit that I'd like to think that I played is I've had many different bosses and different leaders, from chief execs to line managers. And hopefully the one thing that they'll always say is that, I went above and beyond. I was outcome focused, and made sure, we always achieved whatever my piece of the pie was to achieve, always made sure we overachieved. And, thankfully, and a number of times I was always supported and promoted from within whenever opportunities arose. And I think at the same time, I was really lucky that quite a number of times in my career, I kind of had double promotions, because my line manager kind of moved on quite quickly into ways that from jobs I've maybe only recently got into. So yeah, I think I was definitely lucky to have fast track through some of the earlier years just because of opportunity. But like I say, hopefully I played my part. But yeah, it was just a bit of luck, a bit of opportunity, and a bit of hard work along the way. But yeah, it feels a bit strange being sub 40 and having been in this industry for 21 years now.
Yeah, I assume. So now, reflecting on that, you said you have many great bosses and so forth. Now, when you're in executive leadership position, how would you describe your leadership style?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the most important job of a leader, and I've definitely had to evolve. So when I first came into Lincoln City, I was down in the muck and nettles. We had to grow things. You had to demonstrate by leading, and by physically doing things. But then I think the most important skill of a leader is to adapt and evolve to your environment and your situation. So if I was still behaving and acting like the chief executive that came in 2017, as I'm doing now, I think I'd be stunting the growth of the organisation. So I think the most important skill and quality of a leader is evolving and adapting to the environment, and never being the anchor that holds it down, or neither that, or being this utterly woolly, fluffy visionary that's aiming for the moonshot that's never going to hit. I think you've got to be baked in reality. And that I see my job day to day at Lincoln City about just improving people's thinking. So ask questions, poke, prod, but I'm not the technician. I'm not the one that's delivering the certain elements, because if I am, then I'm definitely holding back the team, because there's one of me and there's there's 134 of them, and our job is to develop, leaders and leaders within leaders. So yeah, I think for me, it's about showing you can, get on the shop floor and dig deep where needed, serve and work for your team, but then equally making sure you have the ability to see, have the vision, and articulate it, and then use everything in the toolbox to pull people along, push people along, motivate them, and that's not all good news. That can be having tough conversations as well, but using everything in the toolbox to crowbar and to keep everybody in the bumper bars, but get everything aligned and all working towards that singular goal and singular vision.
Yeah. So how much would you say is your own experience and learnings, and how much, because you have also had a postgrad in strategic leadership. So how much are you taking from the educational system, and how much are you taking from like life experience?
Yeah, the school of hard knocks hurts and resonates more than any. We talk a lot about failing fast, and if you say what's happened in your career, I've had lots and lots of failures, and the job is to learn from that and then to adapt. It's not everything you do doesn't hit the sweet spot, and anyone that expects to just hit the sweet spot every time is kidding themselves. So I think the most important thing is when you have those experiences that you learn from it, you analyze. That's internally as well as with colleagues, and I think it's just getting that balance of that academic approach. I definitely, I was late into kind of higher education, so I did that whilst in industry. So definitely taking those experiences, taking that academic principle, because what I actually found through going in the academic route is that I was doing certain things or enacting certain responsibilities, but I actually didn't know the theory or the academic rationale and reasons behind it. So what that then does is that solidifies your belief, gives you confidence in that, or even just helps you understand it. So I think there were some things that you organically have in leadership roles, but then understanding it better, and then coupled with that, the experiences, and that's getting things right and getting things wrong. So yeah, I think being under 40, 21 years of experience, the academic approach, I think I'm in a reasonably good place to have experienced a lot in football. Definitely don't think I've got all the answers, and definitely I've got a hell of a lot of learning to do. But I think it's a really nice blend, because when I'm talking to people in the ticket office or when we're talking to our marketeers, I feel like I can resonate with them, because at some point in my career I've had something within a role that can resonate and can say that I've felt that I've had that challenge as well. So yeah, hopefully it's a nice blend and a nice balance.
Yeah, it sounds like a really solid foundation, right? You have the academic part, you have the experience. You have been a player, you have been a coach, and also been now in the more on the business side. So all of this together, I assume, like builds a really sound foundation.
Hopefully I'm a better chief executive than I ever was a player and a coach. But yeah, I think it just gives you that that authenticity to be able to see it from different lenses. That's for sure.
Yeah. And you mentioned failure. So one question that I always ask is, have you had any bumps on the road in your career, and if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, well, yeah, quite a few. I think the biggest bump I would probably have, whilst not a single item, was when I came from Doncaster to Lincoln. I recognised the club had a lot of growth to do, and what I did was just probably lift a lot of Doncaster's methodology and try and replicate that in Lincoln. And it probably took me too long to realise that every football club, every organisation is different. They're living, breathing animals. So just because one thing was successful in Doncaster doesn't mean it's going to be successful in Lincoln, despite there being lots of similarities. The nuance of how it's introduced, how it works is really important. And I think the learning, what I actually found there is we shortcutted a lot of learning. So rather than really embedding things with the team, it was like, here's the model, just go do this, tell me when it's done. And whilst I think we had to do that to some degree because we had so much catching up to do at the football club, I also recognised that then had quite a quick ceiling. So we hit our rev limiter quite quickly. And we were bouncing off the rev limiter. So by year 2 come, we're looking for continued growth. We'd had really successful growth in year 1. We'd hit some really good numbers. Everything's looking rosy when in fact, all we'd done is shortcutted a load of learning. We were bouncing off the rev limiter already because we'd not had real embedded learning or embedded growth throughout the organization. So actually, by the end of year 2, we actually went back to basics and stripped everything back. So we realized, or I realized, but at the end of working through year 2, we actually had to go back to the fundamental basics and rebuild this again, from bottom up. And that was the same year that we got promoted from League 2 to League 1. So everybody from the outside thinks this football club's flying, and everybody thinks everything's rosy. But every day you're going into work and just knowing that you're either putting your people under too much stress, that things aren't systematically and fundamentally working. You might be somehow, sometimes pot luck achieving results, but actually it wasn't really baked in at an operational or a strategic level. So that was probably the biggest, or the multiple failures that I have there, and 100% the learning. Whilst I've got no plans to leave Lincoln, the learning that you have is that you just can't lift operational models and just take them somewhere else. Each organization is their own living, breathing thing, and you have to understand it first before you can start implementing change.
Yeah, I think that's a really good insight. So with that in mind, what would be your best advice for someone who wants to take a similar career path as you have?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things really, but don't forget that you're learning in everything that you do, and don't be just so transactional. So even the bad experiences are experiences. And I think the other thing, the most important thing, that is just in this industry, it is a goldfish bowl, and you're always being watched, and you're always on display, and it's about being cognizant of that. And it's it's being the same on your worst day as you would be on your best day. And I think that's really hard. I don't think there's any other industry that you receive the same amount of pressure. So every Saturday at 5 p.m, 8,500 fans give you an appraisal. they tell you what they think of the job that you've just done, and sometimes that feels great and it makes you feel warm and fuzzy because they say nice things, and sometimes it doesn't. And you can be never too high and never too low. And I think that's really important as well. The emotional roller coaster of this. If you start believing your own hype, you're in big trouble. And equally, the moment that you get down on yourself, just because sometimes things out of your control, equally it's not helpful. So trying to just keep that balanced scorecard, and ensure that you're not on the emotional roller coaster with everybody else. Your job's to smooth that path, really.
Interesting. Is there something I haven't asked you yet that you want to mention?
No, only other than I think I'm just feel incredibly privileged and lucky to work in this industry. It's meeting people like yourself and others. It's just it's such a fantastic a career. And if anybody has thoughts about joining or wanting to kind of come into the professional sports industry, like do it. Probably don't do it for the reasons most obvious. I suppose it can look quite sexy and quite appealing from the outside. It's probably, in fact, it's definitely not that. But there's great camaraderie, great people. The sense of when you win or when you're successful, there is nothing like it. I was a goalkeeper, I wasn't a centre forward, but I can only imagine what it must feel like scoring the winning goal. But you get those winning goal moment feelings so many times. And I think that's something that I'd strongly recommend to anybody. If you're going to be part of a sports team, if you're going to then be emotionally all in, because you will get so much more back from it in taking that mindset and that approach.
Completely agree. So if the listeners and the viewers want to follow yourself or the club, social media, where can they read up on news?
Yeah, I do have a Twitter or an X, but I'm not that active. I don't really look at it, but I'm on LinkedIn. weareimps.com is the Lincoln City website. We'd love you to come and visit the football club at any point. So take a look at our website, look at our fixtures. We've got a fantastic atmosphere, brilliant stadium that we'd love to welcome guests new and old to. So so Liam Scully on LinkedIn. Or equally Lincoln City Football Club via weareimps.com.
That's amazing. Liam, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Sports Management Podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you, Marcus.